Okay, welcome back, everybody. We will start in about 30 seconds from now. You can just take your seats. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody settled, so we continue with the session after tea, and it is again part of energy and climate systems. And the first speaker is Leonard Asimov from the School of Business, Society and Engineering in Sweden. And thank you very much, Leonard. We look forward to hear what you have to say. Oh. You were already in.
Yeah. Oh, but
Just go F5.
Wait a minute.
Oh, you can even use this thing.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
That one you can also. Then you get
it. Thank you, Andre. Yeah. My project topic is on assessment of green mini-grid as an alternative energy source to solar home system for rural development in South Africa. Yeah, the National Electrification Program of South Africa was instituted in 1999 after the abolition and repudiation of apartheid laws. The aim of this policy is to increase the energy access of all South Africans. This policy was followed by another policy in 2001, the Free Basic Electricity Policy. The aim of this is to cater for the energy need of the rural households. Because of the low income nature of the rural households, the government supported this policy with electricity basic services support tariff, otherwise known as poverty tariff. During the phase of the National Electrification Program, the government embarked on an aggressive grid expansion, spanned through the periods of 1994 to 1999. At the end of the exercise, it became evident that the benefit was more to the benefit of urban households than more to the urban households than the rural areas. Therefore, the government implemented the solar home system program as the energy corridor to meet the needs of the rural households. During the first phase of my PhD studies, we identified a lot of challenges facing solar home systems. But this time around, I'm going to dwell on the two major aspects of the challenges that affected the outcome. And this has to do with the low power capacity of solar home systems. It limits the productive and thermal use of the system, thereby impeding on development impact of the program. And the other aspect of it is the non-optimal use of the system. This caused, as you see in the next slide, I illustrated these issues there. It causes a loss of an increase in the electricity production cost for the energy providers. And this makes the business unsustainable for the energy providers. Our conclusion to that study is that the free basic electrification development objectives are not being met. And then the solar home system program is unsustainable. Therefore, there is a research need for an alternative energy mix that will meet the need of the rural areas, having in mind the development objective of a free basic electrification program, and as well as a technology that will be consistent with the mitigation of climate change. Figure 1 illustrates the energy loss as a result of non-optimal use of the solar home systems. If you look at the base of, I don't know how to, yeah, the base of the figure 1, you see a green line that indicates the probability of energy loss for an optimized system. It shows us a zero energy loss. But for the non-optimal system, you see the rise with the purple dotted line. That shows the increase in the loss of low probability to the system. And in the state of charge of the battery, we achieved a 90% state of charge of the battery with the optimized system. For the non-optimized system, the state of charge was about 52%. These activities increases the cost of the unit cost of electricity, and that reduces the sustainability of the business. In response to the above need, I intend to focus on the investigation of solar-based mini-grid system during the 3 months I will stay here. I intend to evaluate the techno-economic opportunities and challenges of green mini-grid using hybrid systems. I intend to use data collected from existing mini-grid projects in South Africa to do this. And then financial instruments like life cycle cost and return on investment and unit cost of electricity will be used as an indicator for the economic analysis. The result will form a basis for comparison for the socio-economic impact and technological impact of green mini-grid systems in comparison with solar home systems. And the expected benefit is that it provides the resource materials to the government for an informed policy decisions concerning rural electrification programs. And it will increase the body knowledge on the right mix of energy and choices to all stakeholders interested in rural electrification programs. Most importantly, it will contribute significantly to the conclusion of my PhD dissertations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You kept perfect timing. Questions, discussion? Thank you, Harold.
Harold Anagon, University of Johannesburg. The challenge of thermal use in the home is a big outstanding problem. Have you got any idea of what technologies might be used to supplement solar voltaic to provide thermal tasks in the home of rural people?
What's the question? I can't get the question.
What technologies are available to supply the thermal energy to supplement the solar voltaic uses?
Yeah, apart from the grid, the power from the grid, we have solar stoves that could be used for cooking and all that. And then we have solar geysers. That also is good for hot water heating. And then also the investigation, that's part of the investigation I'm going to conduct here. It's been found also that a mix of solar-based mini-grid system with other renewable energy system could provide enough energy that would drive the power usage.
Thank you.
It's a follow-up on the previous question. What type of energy mix are you talking about? I'm not familiar with your research area.
Yes, the energy mix I have in mind there is a hybrid renewable energy system. For instance, solar and wind, solar biomass, solar and hydro systems. You know, these systems are site-specific. Not every location has the ability to generate energy through this. That is why we need to collect data from different parts of the country for the analysis.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Leonard. Good presentation. I'm wondering, are you studying like a specific case study, or like in general, like what's your kind of?
Yeah, this study is basically based on rural communities in developing countries. But I'm using South Africa as a case study at the moment.
Thank you. One last question. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Leonard, thank you again for the wonderful presentation. I have many questions, but I'll ask one. You know, about so you are talking about household. You are talking about household generation of electricity, just at the household level. So does it also mean that these people are connected to the grid?
No, not exactly. That's the issue. The issue at the moment. These people are in the informal settlements, far away from the grid. You know, that's why solar home system is choosing. But the problem here is that the idea behind the whole program is to bring about development to these communities. But solar home system is not achieving this objective. So we have to look for an alternative energy source that will meet the need of these people. Because it's not just enough to give them light, you know, without any economic impact.
Great. I think we should call it a day there, if you like. Thank you very much for coming all the way from northern Sweden to speak to us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Then we go to the last talk in this session, and we're going to listen to Mr. Shingirirai Mutanga, who's currently from the University of Pretoria in South Africa, and he will introduce us to his talk. Scheduled here, it says modeling an effective energy mix for developing economic using spatial system dynamics. Thank you very much.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you all. I've been introduced there already, but my presentation is on modeling the transition to bio-derived fuels using systems dynamics. It's a slight change from what you have on your manuals there. I'm sure most of you would agree with me that current global energy systems have proven to be unsustainable, and the rationale behind the need to move towards renewable energy technologies spans around issues of climate change, dependence on imported fossil fuels, fluctuations in international market prices, and over-reliance on declining fossil fuels. And let me underscore that the need for energy security, which the previous speaker just alluded to, and there's need to ensure energy security for the development and meet the demands for energy within the African society or the world at large. Within the renewable energy technologies, there are quite a number of them, among which includes biofuels, which I'm presenting on today, solar, wind, hydro, etc. But the focus is primarily on biofuels. And within the biofuel sectors, there are quite a number of crops actually that are used to generate energy. Of primary significance to this study is the issue of sugarcane, which has got inherent benefits or opportunities from its core products such as ethanol and electricity, and we have envisaged this in countries like Brazil as well. Striking to note, where you have sugarcane production at milling companies, you have co-generation, where you generate steam and electricity to supply to the milling plant with electricity, excess electricity actually being sent to the grid. But the challenge of sugarcane, it's a crop, it's grown, it revolves around seasons, and the bagasse supply is limited to the harvesting season. Aim of this study is basically to develop an energy model which is based on systems dynamics or systems analysis and spatial analysis. One, to explore the potential of preserving surplus bagasse for off-crop season electricity generation. Secondly, to examine the effects of land use change dynamics on the current and future potential generation. I think from the previous presentations of already, there's something around that revolved around competing priorities. And within the broader framework of the study, which might not be the scope of this within these 3 months, will be also to determine the potential threshold for biogas as an energy source, and also the social, technical, and economic implications of investment in bio-derived fuels. Having said this, just to set this context, this study will be based on Mauritius, which is an island within the Indian Ocean. As you can see on your map there, that's where Mauritius is, and with a lot of hotels surrounding the island, as you can see right around the map. It's got a population of approximately 1.3 million, an area of 2,040 square kilometers, and approximately 50% of the land is fit for cultivation, of which 90% of this land, or arable land, is used for sugarcane. You fly to Mauritius, all you see is sugarcane plantations. And around 600,000 tons of sugar per annum is being produced, and 5 million tons of cane is processed. The unique aspect of this island is cogeneration. Economic drivers, basically, it's your tourism and sugarcane production. The graphic just shows an illustration of the industrial ecosystem of energy production, from biomass production to energy production, and the byproducts that you get, which is basically your bioethanol, your electricity, and steam that are essential both for the sugarcane plant and for the electricity generation. The expected methods, analysis, and results for this study revolves around the utility of systems analysis, within which it's embedded the utility of geospatial technologies to map the biomass sugar production and land use complexities around. Also, systems thinking, which provides a way through causal loops to dispel the complexity in energy generation through cause-effect analysis, and we get feedback loops that can help us address or digress the different agents that we find within the agencies, within which we anticipate to apply spatial systems dynamics to simulate and build scenarios on biofuels potential, encapsulating the environmental, technical, social, economic, and policy issues. Models for consideration that have been developed before are T21 and Biosum. And in conclusion, I anticipate to assess the potential of sugarcane trash and preservation of excess biogas as a fuel to enable year-round generation of electricity. From this, I anticipate to get a journal article and contribute a chapter to my PhD thesis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingi. Time for discussion, colleagues.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I have very quick questions. One question is that, so because Mauritius, there are lots of sugarcane plantations, what do they use the sugarcane there for? And are you saying that you're trying to find out how you can also use the waste, and also around land share, are people accepting? Do they want to use biofuels? Do they want to use their sugarcane for biofuels or for something else?
Yeah, basically, a quick response to you is to optimize the benefits of sugarcane. And here, the beauty of sugarcane, and that's one of the rationales that I selected it as a biofuel, is you produce your sugar, you still sell your sugar, but from the byproducts of the sugarcane processing, which is the feedstock that you get, which is bagasse, that's after crushing and getting the juice out of the cane, that's what we use actually for electricity generation. And so it's not a competing priority per se, but rather an additive and benefiting from already the excess. But what you find in most cases is most plants that generate electricity, they just generate electricity for the plant, for the sugarcane plant, and it ends there. But what we're saying is we want to maximize the benefits of the byproducts that we get from the sugarcane processing and generate electricity not only for the plant, but to the benefit of the country, which is supplying to the grid, and that's the interest of this study.
Thank you very much. One last question. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question concerning especially economic and policy issues, and I would like to know if it's possible to address the problem of conflicting land use also, like, can you model that also, or is this included somehow in this model?
Okay, thank you very for the good question. I think that's the interest as well of this study, to examine the dynamics around sugarcane, the biomass production itself. As you would have noticed, they're changing land use patterns, and Mauritius being a tourist company, right now there's quite a huge investments on tourism sector, which means we are having hotels, roads, infrastructure being built around the country, and land that used to be used for sugarcane production is converted to tourism. And the question is, are we still producing in the same amount of, feedstock that we used to produce in the past, or it's different? It's something that the study seeks to analyze. And still on that, like I tapped on the first speaker, to tap on the benefits of maximizing or the potential that we can get from the bagasse that we have, which is one of the objectives of the study that it has. So certainly, yes, it seeks to look at the complexity around land use change on energy production.
Thank you very much for your talk. Alan, if you have a very short question. You'll have to use this. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my question is very much connected with her question that was about thinking in the landscape and other uses that in other interests that you may have for the landscape. So coming from Brazil, I can say that one issue from I'm biologist, from the biological point of view, is sometimes you have cana sugar going to places that may have interest for biodiversity. So there was a huge discussion about putting or not putting cana sugar in Amazon, and we have some problems, like some norms in the southeast as well for Atlantic forest. But so the question would be pretty much connected with this kind of look at the landscape as well, like biodiversity importance. And also other comment, like I don't agree very much with these arguments, but people does. Some people talk about, when we talk about biofuels in general, not just cana sugar, that we may be planting something and not planting food. So what do you think about that as well?
Okay, competing priorities between food and energy. I think it's a question that has been asked before as well. And also, your first comment on addressing the social political implications of investment on I think that's where the beauty of systems analysis comes in now, because it tries to integrate and incorporate all the different elements on the complexity around. That's why we speak of complexity in energy generation per se, because the moment we resonate on the social aspects, political aspects, policy, how policy influences, and the dynamics around the resources that we have, the land, the water, to what extent is the land a limiting factor, to what extent is water a limiting factor, to what extent is the policy a limiting factor or enhancing factor to the energy generation. I think that's what the model will try to actually bring on board as well. And it is the intention of the model actually to spell this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shingi. We have to call it. Yeah, very, very short, please.
I would just like to know the time frame for to detect the land use changes.
Okay.
You are going to use satellite images, I guess, or aerial photographs?
Yes.
Yeah, so what's the timeline?
Okay. The land use change, right now, I've already done the remote sensing part, tracking the sugarcane production trends and the changes on land use. I've used satellite imagery dating back to 1960 to date. And so you have got an array actually of how the land use has changed to date and to what extent has this affected. The island used to be almost green with sugarcane plantations, but now it's a different story. And to what extent has this changed the amount of sugarcane that is produced and the feedstock that can be used for the generation of electricity. Thank you.
Thanks. We have to call it there. Thank you. Next speaker, please. It's my pleasure to introduce now next speaker. Now we go to the third cluster, and it's Alexandra Falkiewicz from Poland that will talk to us, I believe, on a quite mathematical talk, asymptotic behavior in dynamic systems on complex network. If that is, no, it's not that anymore, so you will introduce it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. In fact, that my topic is the same one that was introduced, but I was trying to make it a little bit more clear for people who are not working exactly at mathematical modeling as far as mathematics is concerned. During a Young Scientist Summer Program, I would like to sorry for that. I would like to work together with Professor Banasiak and Professor Alexei Davidov on the mathematical models that are based on generalized transport equations on graphs. And I would like to concentrate on the characterization of long-time behavior of such models. During my presentation, I'll try to present the examples how to use this kind of models I would like to examine. But in fact, the models I'm talking about are quite universal, and they can be used in different disciplines, not only environmental problems, but also medicine, logistics, or even sometimes economy. Maybe let's start with compartment models. I would like to give you expression what does it mean exactly for me. Let's think at the beginning about a group of interest, and I would like to divide it into some compartments, and then I would like to, by a graph representation, give an impression what is the relation between those compartments. So the easiest model of that kind is a model of balance of population, which is given here on the left-hand side. And it is represented by a food chain. So in this food chain, there are some species, so those compartments, and they are related by each other by the relation of consumption. And what I would like to do now is to generalize this problem, and I would like to do it in this way, that instead of thinking about the compartment as a vertex of a graph, I'll think about it as an edge. Maybe let's go through the example to make it more clear. We have a network that consists of some pipes, and there is a flow of water in these pipes. And I would like to divide all those pipes as far as the throughput is concerned. And then I know that there is some pollutant in this water that flows together with this water. And by my model, I could give the representation of distribution of this pollutant in the water as far as position in edge is concerned, and also according to the time variable and also this throughput. As far as mathematics is concerned here, this model is much more complicated because it is based on partial differential equations. Here is a transport equation, but it can be also a diffusion one. It depends on the model. What is interesting here is the last condition. It is a boundary condition that tells us exactly how does the material mix in the vertices. Okay, so now I hope it will be enough to understand what is my research goal during this project, because I would like to model the exchange of substance between those compartments. And I would like to improve the second model that I presented. And why is it important to improve it? I started to think about it, that if we have a particle, it can change its feature only at the end of a vertex, of an edge, sorry. But there are some examples when it is good to change this feature at any point of an edge. So it will be the first improvement of my model. The second one is connected with the fact that sometimes it is hard to give the relation between those compartments only by a graph. But sometimes it is possible to give the matrix representation. So the second improvement of my model will be to give the matrix representation in in the model. If we have matrix representation, it is natural that appears the question when this matrix is connected with a graph, when we can give graph representation, and when in this model there is only a generalized problem, and I would like to focus on it also. And the last thing I'll be thinking about is rather more mathematical question, because when we have a model that was created, it is good to answer the question, what is the relation of this model with other models that already exist? And I would like to find out, is it possible to approximate my model by a system of the ordinary differential equations? So exactly the system that was presented at the very beginning. If so, then really my model is a generalization of that problem. I hope I'll manage to answer this question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's never enough time, I know it. Questions, colleagues? There's one there. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to ask, you said that this model can be used in different aspects or in different ways. Could you maybe, could it also be used in living systems, or how would this work?
Yeah, okay. I didn't have much time to give an example that maybe can justify why I'm thinking about such a model. I started to think about a group of cells that can have different rate of maturity. So let's think about such a situation that we divide all those cells in the way that this rate of maturity interests us. And I would like to have such an assumption to that model that at the end, that when such a cell dies, it can, the new cells are produced, let's say daughter cells, but the daughter cells doesn't have to have the rate of maturity the same as a mother cell. And in such case, it is reasonable to give a representation by a different way that was presented in the second model. Because thanks to the jumps that may appear in my models, it is possible that firstly, the cell can change the maturity rate during its life, and secondly, it is possible that after such a cell can die in any moment of time. So I thought, thanks to creating such a model, the representation might be much more precise. But as far as applications of that model are concerned, I was just talking with other participants of project, and I know that they are really concentrated on mathematical modeling also. And I was just talking about and asking what mathematics stands after their models, and they told me that as far as mathematics is concerned, they have nothing to do because mathematicians done their work for them, because the solutions for example, ordinary differential equations are already given. So the things, I suppose I'm here just to present another model that might be useful. I can imagine some examples of applications of them, but I would like during the program to talk about people who are really thinking about real life problems and check if it can be really used there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We break there. Thank you very much. Please, you can speak to Alexandra and discuss seriously with her along the lines. I see there's much discussion that needs to continue. So next speaker is Ms. Annette Ellerman. She's from the Department of Plant Sciences here in Bloemfontein, and she will talk to us about herbicides. I think. Formulations or soybeans, genotypes. Thank you, Annette. You can introduce your talk. Just cue the lights.
Are we begin up and find lights? Good afternoon, everybody. Now you know who I am, and I work on soybeans in order. Excuse. I work on soybeans in order to help alleviate some of the worldwide nutrition deficiencies. Most staple foods used worldwide are very high and rich in starch, but very, very low in proteins, which is necessary to give you a healthy, mentally and physical little baby. It often happens that children is taken from the breast at an early age and put on a high starch diet, and it has been proven that this can lead to problems later. Producing animal protein is very expensive and not always practical, and fertilizing plants with nitrogen is also costly and a possible source of pollution. However, we've got soybeans, who are legumes, and have this amazing relationship with rhizobium bacteria. These bacteria go inside the root of the soya plant. The plant then builds it a penthouse, we just call it a nodule, where this bacterium is totally protected and fed with carbon nutrients from the plant, and in its turn takes nitrogen out of the air, which enables the plant then to produce a grain with a very high amount of protein in it. But that is not all. Also in the soil we have the arbuscule mycorrhiza, which send their growth threads into the plant root, connected to these threads outside the plant, which enlarges the area that the roots have to get nutrients from. And these guys specifically help with the phosphates. Commercial soybean production is normally done over very, very large areas, and weeds are a problem. Well, I Googled pictures for weeds, and that's what came up. Weeds complete with crop plants for water, space, light, and nutrients, and can be a very serious contamination when the grain is harvested. Manual control on this level is impractical, and chemicals may harm the crop. Then in the 1970s, a herbicide was developed that killed all vegetation except plants that have been genetically modified to be resistant. Ooh, don't do that. There you go. So, gone are the weeds. The insertion of this gene changes the metabolism of the plant, and it therefore impacts on the root exudates. Where's this thing gone? No man is an island, and no plant stands alone. Through a series of chemical signals, in our case, root exudates, and I say our because there are 3 of us, this plant communicates with microbes and other soil inhabitants, affecting them one way or another. These then in turn affect the root exudates, other soil inhabitants, and the plant. Soybean root exudations has a positive effect on rhizobia and arbuscule mycorrhiza, causing these organisms to migrate towards the plant and form a fantastic mutualistic symbiosis. And if those words are too big for you, it just means everybody wins in this situation. By qualifying and quantifying these mutual interactions, our group has created a conceptual model to demonstrate these conditions and test the effect of different drivers on the system in order to predict the agricultural consequences and ultimately food security. My research looks at the effect of the anthropogenic drivers on the root exudates as it would affect yield. Ooh, no man, stop doing that. And as I've said, no man is an island, and I'd like to show you the names of the people in our group whose very good mutual interactions has made this possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Annette. You didn't have to conclude such an abrupt way. But are there questions to Annette? Can I ask a quick question? The whole question of weeds. Do you have these kind of weeds that you've shown also a problem in soybean?
Just That's the fields I work in.
No, but a quick explanation of why, if it's genetically modified, that this herbicide is not affecting it, is it?
It's the herbicide interferes in the shikemic pathway in plants, and that pathway ultimately leads to your aromatic amino acids, which builds the basic structure of the plant. So if the plant is not genetically modified to overexpress its ESPS, whatever else it goes, it's such a long word, we won't have time for it, the plant will eventually die because it cannot produce more structural parts, cannot build leaves, cannot build its grains.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I think we should call it another day there. Thank you very much, Annette. We'll hear the other talks just now. Next speaker, please. Is it that one, right? Oops. So the next talk is by Mr. Michael Chong, also from Plant Sciences at the UFS. And I think it is safer for him to introduce his own talk. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I'm fine with the mouse. Okay, so I'm going to first start with some self-introduction. So my name is Michael Chung. I come from Taiwan. I come from an island that's situated next to China. And I came to South Africa at a very young age. Now, as a child, I always was intrigued by biology. And then when it was my time to decide what am I going to study in my university years, I sat down and thought about it. And I realized I am really bad with dissecting things and seeing blood, so I didn't really have a choice, so I decided to continue with plant science. Now, coming from a traditional Taiwanese family, my grandparents and my parents always wanted me to become a doctor, and so I had to compromise. So I became a plant doctor, or I studied plant pathology. Okay, now, plants have a fundamental difference between humans and animals. They do not have the ability to move away from harm and from competition, like Annette mentioned before. Now, they have to come up with a different strategy to be able to compete with this environment and to prevent the pathogens from attacking them. So certain plants develop the ability to produce chemical substances which can be used to repel pathogens or animals or insects, and also they have the ability to restrict the growth or even inhibit the germination of other crops that is next to them, like the neighboring plants, or even the plants in the next generation that you're going to plant next in your crops. The crop that I'm going to be working with is the sorghum crop. Sorghum is a very important cereal crop that is planted, one of the most planted cereal crops in Africa. And it is well known for its negative effects that it has on neighboring crops when they are planted in intercrop or mixed crop plantations. For example, this over here. And also, they are also well known for their effect to prevent the following crop that you're going to plant in the next season from growing. Okay, as shown from Annette's presentation previously, I'm going to be more focused on the negative effects instead of the positive effect that the plant root exudate will have on the microorganisms that is in the soil, and then how does that affect the feedback that the microorganisms will give back to the plant, including both the positive feedback where the microorganisms will be producing less beneficial substances that will help the crop, but also it may reduce the incidence of disease and other pathogens to be affecting the crop to reduce its productivity. Okay, so here's the same concept model that we came up as a group, and then I will be working with, my research question is, how does selective planting impact on sorghum root exudates, and how does that affect the yield of sorghum? Okay, and my anthropogene gyre would be sorghum cultivar variety, so the different types of sorghum cultivar variety, which will have a different ability to produce this negative root exudate, and then how will that affect the microbial community and also the plant community that is going to be grown in successive planting. And then my agricultural consequence will be how will that affect soil health as a whole when the next crop will be planted, and also how does that ultimately affect the sorghum productivity itself. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for making up time. Questions to Michael? May I quickly ask you, you said that, because this is very interesting, that the next crop that it is being produced is sort of being affected by pathogens or chemicals that's been liberated by the first crop. How can that be avoided? Is it possible to manipulate it to avoid that you can have multi-crops without?
The negative effects of the plant exudate only works on certain crops, and then if you plant specific crops that is unaffected by this, you will actually be more benefited, because not only the plant will be able to grow in this soil, it might also benefit from the reduced pathogens that has been from the sorghum root exudates.
How long does it take for those pathogens to decompose? Is that, sorry, how long after you've...
It doesn't, I don't think it will kill the pathogens. It will inhibit the growth of the pathogens, so it will prevent the pathogens from more easily to affect the next crop, if that helps, answers the question.
That's good. Okay, time for another question. If not, can we thank Michael again? Thank you. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is Marcele Vermeulen, also from Plant Sciences. And I think I will also ask Marcele to introduce her talk herself. So this is the last talk then in ecosystems and water. Thank you very much, Marcele.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to tell you a bit about amaranths. So just to start off with, we know, everybody knows about the growing population in the world, and that food security is really of a great concern. Now, our world food security is currently based basically on 20 species. Now, we rely on this small crop diversity to provide us with calories and proteins, and this is basically all that stands between us and starvation. And these crops includes basic foods like maize, wheat, rice, and potatoes. Now, I want you to imagine just for a little while the implication it will have on your life if we lost just one of these crops. Now, we had a very nice meal with Dr. Ulf and the rest of our research team, and I imagined I love sushi, so just the loss of rice. But if you think about it more seriously, how many people rely on rice as a staple food? So how do we buffer ourselves against this? If we increase the diversity of crops we rely on, we have a better chance to feed the world. So what do? We start looking at what we call forgotten crops. Now, these are crops that were once used or that are only used on a local scale. And one of these crops are amaranth grain. Now, amaranth grain was used in the pre-Columbian time. It was as important as maize and beans in the New World. But due to its use by the ancient Incas and Aztecs in their rituals, they would mix these grains with human blood and with honey and make it into figurines. That is very similar to what is today used on the Day of the Dead in Mexico, and then offer this to the gods. Now, because of the use in pagan rituals and in animal sacrifice, the use basically died out, and today its role is greatly reduced, and it's mostly sold and used only as a health food. Now, why are we interested in bringing amaranth grain back? Now, first of all, it has a highly efficient way of producing its food. So this just means it's got a fancy way of photosynthesizing its food, which means it can survive in areas like Bloemfontein, where we live, in semi-arid regions, which is very warm and has a low rainfall. This also has a very high protein content, which, as Annette says, is very important. And it also has the added benefit of a low gluten content, as more of the world is developing gluten intolerance. But the negative side effect is that this plant is known to produce root exudates into the soil, which unfortunately has a negative effect on crops that is planted either with it, which in mixed cropping, which we call intercropping, or when you plant crops after this crop in successive planting, which is called crop rotation. So it will have also, as Michael said, an effect on plants that you put in afterwards. It will reduce its germination, and therefore it will reduce your crop yield. But this now brings me to the next part. If we want to introduce this new crop, so we obviously have to look at what possible implications can it have. And just as Michael, I have a microbiology background, but I don't do well with blood and all those scary microorganisms that can attack humans. So I decided a plant doctor is also maybe the best way to go. But I'm also interested in the health of the soil microbial community. So what goes on underneath the roots where we don't really think about, or what goes on where we don't look. And these root exudates, we don't know with this plant what the effect will be on our soil microbial community. Now, just as on our human skin, we know we have quite a big microbial population that occurs on your skin. And we know that there's some good guys and some bad guys that occur on your skin. And these two needs to be in balance. Your good guys, we want them there, but if you do something and there's an imbalance, then the bad guys take over and you get sick. Now, in the soil, we also have good guys and bad guys. We have decomposers, and they make food available for our plants. So they break down complex chemical structures so that our plants can take it up. And if you have to kill some of these guys, then you open up the area for a lot of pathogens maybe to then take over, which means that if you plant your next crop, there's already a lot of pathogens in the soil, which will be detrimental to your yield then once again. So this brings then me to my question. We know that under changing temperature, these root exudates can increase. So I want to know, what will the impact be then of temperature change on these root exudates, and how will this affect yield ultimately? So you've seen this conceptual model now already. So I'm be working on Amaranthus cruentus, and my anthropogenic driver is then temperature change, and obviously how this affects then root exudates, your microbial community and your plant community, and then obviously ultimately how this will affect your crop yield. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Can you just get the light for us? Thank you. Some discussion on this? Thank you, Martin.
Hi.
Hi, Martin.
Thank you for a very nice presentation and 3 nice presentations on similar topics. I think I'm Martin Flatter, University of Oslo. I was wondering about how you're gonna test this and measure this temperature change on the roots. Is it a lab experiment or is it a sort of natural environment?
Because obviously this kind of science can't be done in 3 months. We already started with some of the experiments before the time. So I had to plant the plants before the time because they grow for 3 months. So I already harvested my soil. So what we did is we put them at 3 different temperatures, one optimum temperature, and then put them at one a cold stress and then at a heat stress. And then we can see what the effect will be on the soil microbial organisms. And then we've got different ways to look at how it influences the soil microbial community.
Great. So it only works for a summer program.
Thanks. Just for curiosity, because I'm not familiar with your field, what are the other anthropogenic drivers apart from temperature change that affect this roots?
Okay, so obviously it's not just temperature stress. So if you go into the literature, if any of the necessary, like nitrogen is missing in the soil, that is also considered as a stress. CO2 can also, increasing CO2 can be a stress. Drought can be a stress. Obviously with this guy, it can handle drought for longer than some of your other plants will, but it will also stress, especially if you add high temperature to that.
Thank you. Time for one last quick question. There we have.
I'd just like to know, those root exudates, do they have a negative impact on all successive crop plant species? Because I know of a fact, or of species in ecology, that produce similar negative root exudates that limit competition, but then in turn it facilitates other species to move closer to that plant.
Yeah, obviously with this plant there's very little research, but there will also be plants that, as Michael said, there is some crops that you will be able to plant with it and some crops that you won't be able to plant with it. So we actually have a master's student in our group that's actually working on seeing what can be planted in crop rotation with this crop.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcel.
Thank you.
And I think we conclude then the second session by this, so it's exactly on time. Can I ask you, the lunch will now commence, and Priscilla, it will be just be outside, so lunch is just served outside here, so help yourself and then sit on the lawns and enjoy the sunshine while it lasts, specifically all the guys from the far north. And then we're scheduled to start at 12:50, so 10 to 1. But can I ask you to try and be taking your seats at 12:45 already, so we can really start exactly on time. So thank you very much to all speakers. Thank you for those who've been logged in from outside South Africa and inside South Africa. See you again in then 3/4 of an hour.